Hey, what's up, Zach here? And today I have got the shoe that Steph Curry, I guess, basically saved the United States in, the Under Armour Curry Flow 12. Let's get into them. Now, starting off in the uppers of these, I guess I should preface, from the Curry 9, 10, and then into the 11 and 12, the 9 and 10 uppers were just really unforgiving, really uncomfortable. The 11s were, wow, I mean, just quite a bit of a step up. And now the 12s are even better than that. I mean, Under Armour, at least in the last, few years and few iterations of the Currys, really chunky, interesting upper weaves, but also very unforgiving. Whereas on the 12, it's a little bit more matted down. As you can see on the microscope, it's that TPU and textile weave, much more, thin, much smaller, smaller chain linking in there, but also when you do that, you get a little bit more of a flowing, no pun intended, but flowing upper. And that goes throughout the entire upper, all the way to the back where you get this external heel counter that is combined with an internal heel counter. It is a little bit thin, but when you've got the halo external one, the shoe's gonna stay pretty stable. And the thing I noticed is, especially with having flow foam on these, and then the uppers being so light, the shoe just feels like an absolute feather, which is nice. Now the tongue on these things is, we're seeing a lot of these recently, these more bubble foam going all the way through the tongue. And then it has these dimples in them, which look like breathing channels. They are not, they actually don't communicate all the way through. Look at this thing on the breathability test. Only heated up 103.8 degrees, which really isn't bad, but that was because of the rest of the uppers and how good that heat was escaping. When I had my heat gun on there and just my hand, you could feel it coming out of all the way from the side panel, all the way into the tip of the toe, and then back around. If you look at this thing on the breathability mapping too, you can see there too, fog was just blowing out of the forefoot of the shoe and the sides of the shoe. The wind was kind of blowing in here. So fog was, more moving this way, but just suffice to say, this shoe lets go of a lot of heat and moisture throughout the entirety of the uppers, but because of how strong that woven panel is that goes all the way around the shoe, it still has a pretty decent amount of containment. You look inside of that, you can kind of see too, it's got this really thick netting material. It's almost got some padding to it, then a true padding layer, and then that outer woven layer. So honestly, you're getting quite a bit of protection between you and the outside. It also has a ridiculous amount of padding, and that padding gets more and more as it goes up into, the Achilles tendon portion of the ankle collar and heel counter of the shoe. Now, in terms of heel slipping, when you first put them on, honestly, it's pretty mild to moderate, but then once you break this anterior ankle, and I know I talked about this in the studio build video, but once you break this in a little bit, that anterior ankle sinks around, that last eyelet really sinks around your ankle, and these things mild at best. So really for a Curry shoe, which we're used to seeing pretty moderate heel slippage, this one was quite a bit of an improvement. Hey, look at the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. Honestly, the burr basically just scuffs this drag guard up. This is a really nice felt drag guard. It is really substantial. Remember, these are meant for indoor courts, not outdoor. So in terms of dragging or sliding on these ones, really shouldn't have a problem. And just one final thought about the uppers in terms of the laces and lace irritation. Number one, these laces are double backed here. There's plastic underneath there, so they really are substantial. But number two, because they are integrated and just because of the geometry of them, I had zero lace irritation whatsoever. Honestly, one of the more comfortable lockdown shoes I've put on recently. Getting into the midsole teardown, this is, pretty interesting coming from the 9s and the 10s and then getting into the 11s and the 12s. This is a dual density flow foam setup. Remember, flow foam is the same materials as diaper elastic, and in that, because there's so many components to them, you can really start messing with the dials of this foam. You look at this thing on the bounce height test, only 29 centimeters in the rear foot and the forefoot. And that's because of that top layer on the midsole. That is a real shock absorbing layer. What really gives these shoes their pop, and they do have a lot of pop, is the shank, right? It starts in the midfoot, then goes all the way into the forefoot, almost creating, a forefoot leaflet or a diving pad on these things. So honestly, when we get into the speed ratio, that kind of lies a little bit on these because flow foam plus the longer shank, we've talked about this with Curry shoes in the past, really does give quite a bit of a nice diving board effect. And on these ones, because of that dual density flow, I know I talked about this on the 11s, just a really comfortable profile coming down on these, just a really forgiving profile, especially for somebody going up for layup after layup or jump shot after jump shot, like Steph Curry, or dunk after dunk after dunk. That landing on these ones is a lot more forgiving than previous Curry shoes. And getting into the outsole tread, or I should say the foam tread, because it is just stamped flow foam. There is no actual outsole tread on these. Very, very similar to the Curry Flow 11. You get a little bit more of a thick pad under the ball of your foot, under the big toe, as well as under the fifth metatarsal head. So you need a little bit more of a flat profile there. Then it just kind of radiates out from the heel. It's, like I said, it's more of a stamped pattern. And remember, Flow shoes rely more on surface area contact. So if you have a clean floor, they are just absolute beasts in terms of tack. They're also absolutely silent. Look at this thing on the grip test ramp, doesn't slip till 46 degrees. I mean, these things are, the real deal. What I noticed is, though, because I still have some sawdust here, I haven't gotten my Swiffer out and really kind of cleaned this floor out really well. When these things were getting sawdust or really any dust on them, that's when they start to slip. And that is kind of the rub with Curry shoes. If you get something that interferes with that contact on the ground, because remember, that entire stamp bottom has to work together to create contact, it's kind of all or nothing, right? They're easy enough to wipe down and to get more traction on, but just remember, if you notice any dust whatsoever, get it off there, because that really kind of ruins the traction, because on a clean floor, they're absolute beasts. Now, if you look at these things on the speed ratio, they only come in at a 2.19, a shank score of 0.2, brings that up to a 2.39. I really think that undersells it, and that's because of the forefoot leaflet. If this shank went from the rear foot to the midfoot, I don't necessarily think that would, I think that speed ratio would probably carry true. When you've got the dual density flow and you've got some of that flow meant more for shock absorption, you're not going to have as much of a lively pop out of it, but because of these with that diving board in the forefoot, they still have it in spades. So honestly, this is one of the shoes that, yeah, the speed ratio does maybe lie a little bit, especially because of how light these are. Number one, they don't feel like you have anything underneath your foot to begin with. And number two, that shank is really giving you something back. So in terms of a lightweight, speed-focused shoe, yeah, I mean, still the 11s as well as the 12s now, really, really fantastic. And on the outsole durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, I always love doing it on the Flow. Of course, the durometer doesn't even reach double digits. And yeah, the burr just pummels right through it. Obviously, these are meant more for indoor courts. Although even on indoor courts, if you do produce a lot of friction, it is going to start to wear down a little bit. I would say if you're a real dragger or slider, like I said, it's the durability is going to wear down. If you're someone pretty light on their feet, like Steph Curry is, honestly, though, on indoor courts, they should be okay. And getting into the fit of the Curry Flow 12s, this was probably my favorite part of them. Super forgiving, from, I keep talking about this, but from the 9s and the 10s, and then getting up into the 11 and 12, it's just, at least for my type of foot, a wider foot, it's just getting better and better and better. These things only have an inflare of 11 degrees and a toe box width of 10.5 centimeters, a metatarsal width of 9.5 centimeters, a pretty true length of 28.8 centimeters, and the toe box tapers 29 degrees. So honestly, for most people, this is going to be a pretty forgiving shoe. If you are a narrow foot, I can't believe I'm saying this, but honestly, I think you can go down a half size to get a better lockdown, more weight reduction. A medium and a 2E, I think, just go true to size. A 4E, I think you can go up 1/2 size and break these in. If you have a really big bunion or tailor's bunion, I'd say go up 1 size on them. The problem is because they're kind of meant to fit like a glove. That's what stops a lot of the heel slippage. So if you're going up more than a half size on these, I think that's where you're going to start to get a lot of that slippage. You can fit a low profile orthotic in these, which is, I think, is just absolutely crazy. A really bulky orthotic, which you want with a platform on it, is going to allow a lot more slippage on them. But in terms of like really any, more low profile deal, like a Power Step Pulse or something like that, or even a Bridge, honestly, I think they'll be just fine. Now for the snake bitten foot, honestly, really anything besides an ankle sprainer, which is funny because that's what Steph Curry is, but he also wears the Zamstay 2DX, which these are also fine for at your regular size, because with a brace, that anterior ankle, that last lace eyelet does lock down around a brace really nicely. But that aside, because of that dual density flow foam, because of the protection in the forefoot for anything ball of foot pain, these are absolutely fantastic for anybody really with like forefoot arthritis. That's a really big one, like hallux limitus, right? Big toe joint arthritis. Heel pain, ball of foot pain, arch pain, arch strain. These things are absolutely fantastic for really any shock-induced injuries up the leg. Really the only thing, just because the flange on these is pretty thin, really the only thing that I think these are really bad for is more midfoot and ankle spraining. With that being said, that brings us into the performance of these. Honestly, pretty similar to the 11s, just a little bit more comfortable. Honestly, on a clean floor, they pivot absolutely fantastic. If you're trying to get a quick jump shot off, that 4-foot leaflet, you know, like the longer shank, and I've been talking about it the whole video, but it's just so easy to kind of bounce up off the ground. And me, who has a lot of dude to get up off the ground, can really appreciate a lighter shoe that can do that. And honestly, you know, someone that's trying to dunk, right? If you're like trying to learn how to dunk or something, this is kind of like a sneaky good pick because it's light, has a lot of shock absorption when you're coming back down, right? And it's got the leaflet and the 4-foot to kind of give you a little bit more propellant. So, you know, if you're someone that's, you know, practicing dunking or trying to learn or trying to, you know, perfect it, this is actually, honestly, even versus more maximalist shoes, this is something honestly akin to the 361, the AG4, right? I always talk about how it's so great for that because it's so protective coming back down. You're getting a lot of the trappings of that shoe in the Curry Flow 12, but in just a much lighter, more low profile package. So love to hear your thoughts on the 12s. Are you picking them up or are you getting discounted versions of the 11s? Did you watch the Olympic finals where Steph was in these and chucked a 3 over 2 guys completely on his back? I'd love to know what you thought of that. That was absolutely insane. I felt really lucky to actually watch that live. It was absolutely crazy. Not live in person, but live on TV. So like I said, I'd love to hear your thoughts about these in the comments down below. And if you do want to see another brand new shoe that's a lot lighter than it looks and kind of plays similar to the Curry Flow 12, but in a much more maximalist package, the 361 Big 3 Pro, Big 3 5.0 Pro Joker, it's a mouthful. I'll leave that linked up above and make sure you subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.